I found my perfect dad's private note, and I discovered his sick, secret life. I confronted him and made him pay dearly for everything. To this day, I'm still disgusted every time I recall that fateful day. Just a few weeks prior, my life, my family's life, was perfect. A perfect facade I had unknowingly believed wholeheartedly for 23 years. But it all came to an absolute end. I'm Alex, 23 years old. I live with my parents, my father, David, 59M, and my mother, Sarah, 48F. Sounds normal, right? It was a harmonious family, consisting of a successful father and a gentle mother. My entire life, I always thought I had the perfect dad. He was my role model. He was a successful businessman, always tried to be home for dinner, was always at my soccer games, and bought my mom the most expensive gifts. Dad was the pillar. He was everything to us. I trusted him absolutely, more than I trusted myself.
Besides them, there's Olivia, my sister, who was 20 years old and a sophomore in college. It goes without saying, she idolized Dad so much that I was worried if she'd ever find a boyfriend who measured up. For Olivia, Dad, David, was a superhero. She trusted him even more than I once did. Remembering Olivia's admiring gaze at Dad back then, I now feel disgusted with myself, having to bear the most terrible secret of my life. I discovered that my family and I had been living a perfect lie, meticulously constructed over 2 decades, and now it all collapsed with a single click. It all started with something utterly trivial. On a Saturday, like any other Saturday, my dad's laptop started acting up. As you know, my dad's a businessman, so his devices are always essential tools. He grabbed a replacement and handed me the broken one to look at. I'm pretty good with these things, so I just fiddled with it a bit. That afternoon, I could have been out with my friends, but no. I sat there, rummaging through the machine, and then I found a strange file simply labeled Private Notes. Nothing special, not even in any of my dad's work folders. Normally, I never pry into anyone's private affairs, not even my parents'. But for some reason that day, as if compelled by something, I clicked it. And then everything collapsed. Not my dad's laptop, but my entire life. That file wasn't work notes, it was a diary, or rather a manifesto written by some psychopath, I swear. Every single line of text was like a sharp knife cutting into my eyes. The content inside was too disgusting and sickening for me to recount entirely here, believe me. But in essence, that perfect dad I'd always idolized, he had been involved with hundreds, perhaps even thousands of women, starting when he was just over 20 years old. And yet he always told my mom she was his first love. He did it weekly. Every week, my dad met a different woman. For each one, he meticulously recorded their name, characteristics, location, and even his conquests. What's even more horrifying is I recognized some of them. There was Dad's former assistant, my mom's friend from a tennis club, and a woman Mom had introduced at a company party. With every name that appeared, my stomach twisted into knots, making me want to vomit.
It turns out my image of a happy family, it was all just a disgusting play, and my dad was the most twisted director. Because what he wrote next in that damn diary about his new victories made me despise him to my very core. My despicable father, he relished causing others pain. He wrote that he enjoyed deceiving women, seducing them into falling madly in love with him, and then cruelly discarding them, all just to see their most heartbroken reactions. It was all a game, and that feeling of seeing them at their most anguished was the victory he was most proud of. There's one sentence I'll never forget. "Her tears fuel me. Another victory." He wrote that. Victory over what? Over ruining other people's lives? Damn it, who is this person? This isn't the dad I talk to every day. Or is this the real him? Everything I ever believed about my dad, about my family, shattered into a million pieces. Just then I saw another name and a different city. Only a few short lines, but they sent a chill down my spine. My dad not long ago even had a second life with some woman in another place. Those long business trips, after which he'd return home with gifts for Mom and us 2 kids, accompanied by affectionate words about how much he missed us all. Yet in his notes, he wrote with cynical remarks about the ease of concealment. It turns out behind it all was something too venomous. I couldn't believe it. My father's two-faced, manipulative, and deceitful lifestyle sent shivers down my spine. He wasn't just cheating, he was a multifaceted psychopath living right under the same roof as me. My whole life was one big lie. And now I'd accidentally uncovered this horrifying secret. What should I do? Tell my mom? How would she live then? But if I don't say anything, I'll live with this secret forever, coexisting with a psychopath for the rest of my life. No way! Everything kept swirling in my head. I didn't know what to do anymore. I was completely disoriented. After that night, I couldn't sleep a wink. Fear and anger swirled relentlessly in my head. Eventually, I knew I couldn't live with this malignant tumor festering inside me. I had to confront him and find answers to all the crushing weight on my soul. The next morning, I waited for Dad in his study very early. He looked a bit surprised to see me already there, but he still carried himself with his usual composure, that typical big boss demeanor he always wore. He asked what was so urgent that I'd come to find him so early. My heart hammered against my ribs when he spoke, feeling like it would burst out. I didn't say a word, just quietly took out my phone, unlocked it, placed it on the desk, and slid it over for him to see the screenshot. My dad leaned closer, and as he looked at them, his face immediately went pale. He looked at me, then at the screen, then back at me, staring intensely. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Then he broke it with a harsh, steely voice. "What have you been looking at, Alex?" I took a deep breath. "What have I been looking at? I've been looking at how you live a double life, how you're proud of your own hypocrisy, and how you torment others. I've been looking at the diary of a psychopath, Dad." Without beating around the bush, my bursting emotions made me blurt it out directly. Hearing how I spoke, my dad sneered, a look of contempt, as if I were a foolish little boy who didn't know what was better. "What are you playing at, my son? Those are just some nonsensical notes. You wouldn't understand." The words were right there, plain as day, yet he was brazenly denying everything as if nothing had happened. But I wasn't an idiot. Nonsense? Hooking up with hundreds of women every week, even when you have a wife and children, is nonsense? Or the way you wrote about the tears of the women you betrayed being your fuel, is that nonsense too? I retorted. It seemed he found me more stubborn than he'd anticipated, so he didn't even bother denying it anymore. He immediately changed tactics. "Listen, Alex," my dad said, his voice ice cold. "You want to tell your mother about those nonsensical notes, don't you? Have you thought this through? If you do that, do you think your mom can handle it? Go ahead and tell her. See if you two will have anything left. Your mom, and you too." He paused, looking straight into my eyes, as if trying to read my thoughts. "Your entire college fund, the car you're driving, my entire empire that was supposed to be yours someday, it will all disappear. You won't get a single penny from me. Do you really want that to happen, son?" I felt my throat constrict. He was threatening me with my mother and with the future he had promised. The bastard! Then he lowered his voice, trying to sound experienced and remorseful. "Son, all men have moments like that. It's an instinct every man has. I admit everything I've done was a mistake, but I've changed and overcome it. I promise I won't do it again. What you're doing is destroying the happiness and future of our entire family. Your mother will be devastated. You know that will surely happen. Do you want to see your mother collapse like that? If anything happens to your mother, or if our family falls apart, it will all be your fault, my dear Alex." Even though I already knew he was a liar, it was at this moment that I realized he was a master manipulator, an incredibly skilled salesman. His empire wasn't built out of nowhere, but regrettably, no matter how talented he was, the father standing before me was a devil in human disguise. He didn't care about me, about my mother, or about anyone else but himself. It was all too much for me. I just stood there in silence, unsure of the right thing to do. He looked at me for a moment, then suddenly sighed, as if genuinely disappointed. "Think carefully, son," he said, patting my shoulder before walking out. Though he seemed to dismiss me, after that confrontation, my dad didn't stop trying to manipulate and control the situation. And his next target was none other than Olivia. He began approaching my sister, still under the guise of being a great father. I was coming down the stairs, lost in my own uncertain decisions, when I overheard their conversation. In that same study, Dad had called Olivia in and told her, "Your brother Alex is still too young and naive. Recently, he came to me to talk about something he thinks I did wrong." I tried my best to explain that it was just a misunderstanding, but Alex truly doesn't understand. "You have to help me, Olivia. You have to talk to your brother. Don't let Alex ruin our family over a small misunderstanding." After that, he praised Olivia, calling her smart, talented, and beautiful, then told her he trusted her immensely and would give her an important position in the company after she graduated and leave her a larger share of his assets. At dinner that night, I looked at my sister and the way she gazed at Dad with the same admiring eyes as always. I knew Olivia was now a pawn in his game. After dinner, she even came to me, questioning, "What are you doing, big brother? Why are you making Dad sad?" Seeing the suspicion in her eyes, I wanted nothing more to explode and just tell her everything. But the words about the potential consequences he had drilled into my head kept swirling, confusing me. And so, I remained silent.
That's when I felt utterly betrayed, not just by my sister, but by myself. I didn't know what was right to do. I felt completely alone. And then there was my mom. She remained so carefree, still completely trusting my devil of a father. Seeing her smile, seeing her happy because of his gentle, caring words, only twisted the knife deeper. She had dedicated her entire life to this family, to that man. The more I looked at her, the more I pitied her. And now I had to decide, should I shatter that facade of happiness to expose this horrific truth? That pain, it weighed on my shoulders every single day. I didn't know what to do anymore. But then, in my deepest despair, a thought flickered in my mind. A name. One of the names in Dad's damned diary. I knew it was a gamble. Would I find her? Would she even still be alive? I didn't know, but I had to try. I couldn't just sit there and let him continue his sick game. And I found her, the person who a few years ago had lived a life with my devilish father. Her name was Jessica, around 40 years old. She wasn't as hard to find as I thought. I just contacted the address listed in the notes, made a few inquiries, and got her phone number. At first, when I called and introduced myself as David's son, she was very cautious and reserved. I understood. Who would want to talk to the son of the man who ruined their life? But after a few persistent calls and a brief explanation of why I was calling, she finally agreed to meet me. I remember clearly the moment sitting in the cafe when I handed my phone to Jessica. My hand trembled as I unlocked it, the screen lit up, and the words from that damned diary reappeared. Jessica looked at it, and her face immediately drained of color. From her initial calm demeanor, her face suddenly turned ashen, as if she'd seen a ghost. Then she was silent for a few seconds, before a slight shiver ran through her. Very subtle, but enough for me to clearly see her horror. Her eyes revealed an old, deep pain, like a healed scar that had just been torn open again. I saw the shattered look in those eyes and wondered what my mother would have to go through when confronted with what I was trying to expose. And then Jessica began to speak. Her voice at first was very soft, trembling, as if she were afraid of something. But then, word by word, they poured out. "I can't believe so many others were harmed just like me. He did exactly the same things to me. The way he approached me, his words, it all made me believe. I believed he was the destiny of my life." She recounted how, back then, my dad approached her under the guise of a successful, charming, and talented businessman. Exactly the image he had projected to us for so many years. He promised everything about love, about a bright future, a rosy life. He even said he would marry me, build a happy family. Everything was just like what your dad wrote in that damned diary. All of it was carefully calculated lies, but I blindly believed him. But that wasn't all, my friends. The story didn't just stop at romantic deception. I thought I knew all about my dad's depravity, but Jessica showed me I was still naive. His psychopathy was a million times more horrifying. It didn't just stop at cheap mind games. The devilish old man
didn't just deceive Jessica's emotions, he also enticed her to invest her life savings into a joint business project that he concocted, promising enormous returns and the rosy life she could have with him if the project succeeded. Jessica, trusting my dad's sweet words completely, poured all her money into it. But then, the project vanished. The money vanished, and David vanished too. Jessica lost everything, lost it all. Just think, how deceitful must a man be to do something like that? My dad, it turns out, wasn't just a psychopath who enjoyed tormenting others' emotions. He was also a professional financial swindler. He exploited not only the hearts, but also the wallets of the women he approached. My dad's flashy exterior, his success, and the enormous wealth he possesses were all built on the sweat, tears, and ruin of women like Jessica. I asked Jessica, "Why didn't you sue him? Why did you endure all of this?" She just sighed. "Alex, at that time, I was too heartbroken, too ashamed. I just wanted to forget everything. I didn't have clear evidence nor the strength to fight someone with power and money like my dad." She even told me that she had considered suicide out of despair and shame. This was no longer just a mistake. This was a story full of crimes. Initially, when I told Jessica I would expose my father's true colors and asked for her help, she flat out refused. Jessica just wanted to forget everything. She said she was too tired, too scared to confront someone as powerful as my dad. But when she heard me recount how my father was still continuing his sick games and how he was trying to manipulate both me and my sister, something in Jessica awakened. She looked straight into my eyes, her once despairing gaze now ablaze with a fierce fire. "You know, Alex," she said, "I've lived in this fear long enough. I once thought I'd never escape David's shadow, but now, looking at you, I know I'm not alone, and I believe we can do this. I will cooperate with you. Together, we will expose his true face." In that moment, I felt a ray of light pierce through the darkness. I was no longer alone. I had an ally and a living witness to my father's cruelty. This fight could finally begin. After my conversation with Jessica, everything in my head felt cleansed. It was clearer than ever before. I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. This secret was crushing me, suffocating me. I had to do something, immediately, not just for myself. I looked at my mom, Sarah. She had lived a life full of love and trust, but she deserved to know the truth. There was no way I could let my mom continue living in the perfect illusion my dad had created. And above all, David had to pay. He couldn't keep ruining other people's lives, turning them into his entertainment. A psychopath like that couldn't be allowed to live in peace. I talked to Jessica, and she fully supported me. "We have to tell your mom, Alex," Jessica said, her eyes full of determination. "She needs to know the truth. And I'll go with you. I'll be the witness. He won't be able to deny it anymore."
I took a deep breath and began to tell the story. With every word I uttered, I felt like it was cutting into my own heart. The more she listened, the worse my mom's face became. She looked at me, then at Jessica, her eyes full of disbelief and anger. "Alex, what are you saying?" Mom's voice trembled, full of incredulity. "Who is this woman? Are you making this up? How dare you say such things about your father?" I knew Mom was in pain. She was trying to deny this harsh reality. I didn't say anything more. I simply held out my phone, showing her the screenshots from Dad's cursed diary. I let Mom read them for herself, feel them for herself. Then I spoke, my voice trembling but trying to stay firm. "Mom, this is what Dad did. It's all here. And this is Jessica, one of Dad's victims." Jessica began to speak. Her voice was hesitant at first, but then it grew stronger and clearer. Jessica even provided old text messages and the phantom business contracts my dad had conjured up. The evidence was irrefutable, undeniable. There was no room for doubt. My mom just stared at the evidence. She didn't say a single word. Only tears flowed incessantly. It was the pain of a woman deceived for over 20 years, betrayed cruelly by the person she trusted most, the man she loved most. It wasn't just emotional pain, it was the collapse of her entire belief system, her entire life that she had nurtured.
My mom had trusted my dad implicitly for nearly 30 years of her life. She had lived a marriage she thought was happy and complete, a home she had poured her heart into. And then, in an instant, everything was just a lie. Mom's silent sacrifices were now meaningless. Looking at my mom then, my heart felt like it was being squeezed. I saw how much pain she was in, and I was the one who had pulled back the curtain. This was the moment I had both longed for the truth to be exposed, but also the thing I feared most. The facade of false happiness had shattered into pieces, but at least now Mom knew the truth, and to me, that was the most important thing. But then, just at that moment, Olivia appeared. I don't know why, but she had come home without us realizing it. What she had heard, I don't know either. I only knew that she stormed into the room, her face livid, looking at me as if I were the enemy.
What are you doing, Alex? Do you want to destroy this family? Do you even know what Dad has done for us? I looked at Olivia and tried to explain, tried to show her the evidence, but Olivia wouldn't listen. She kept blaming me, calling me a destroyer, a selfish brother who only thought of himself. She couldn't believe the father she idolized could do such disgusting things. She'd rather believe Dad's lies than face the harsh truth. My sister just ran out of the house without looking back. My mother was devastated, sobbing uncontrollably, and my sister turned her back and left, treating me like an enemy. That situation felt like another knife twisting in my heart. I thought everything was over, that I had ruined everything, but I was wrong, completely wrong. My mother, it turns out, was much stronger than I ever imagined. Though tears still flowed, the lifeless look in her eyes was gone. Instead, a fire began to ignite. It was a flame of anger and determination. Mom looked at me, then at Jessica, and then she said something I will never forget. "I cannot live in this lie for one more day." Her voice trembled, but it was filled with conviction. I want a divorce. I want to end all of this." Hearing her say that, I felt both heartbroken and strangely proud. My mother wasn't the passive, weak woman my dad or even I had always thought. My mom was standing up. And then Jessica lent us a hand. She said, "I know a lawyer. I once looked for one but didn't dare contact her. She's very good, especially with complicated divorce cases. She'll help you, Sarah." That's how we met Elena. She was a divorce lawyer, very tough, the kind of person who never gives up. We told Elena the entire story, from my dad's disgusting diary to the financial fraud that Jessica was a victim of. We didn't leave out a single detail. Elena listened to every one of our words, not missing a single detail. She didn't judge or show any particular emotion, just focused on taking notes, sometimes giving a subtle nod. When we finished, she took a deep breath, then looked directly at my mother. "Miss Sarah," Elena said, her voice calm but powerful, "we're not just getting a divorce here. We're going to demand justice, and Mr. David will pay." Hearing Elena say that, I felt a jolt run through me. For the first time since I found that damn diary, I felt hope, real hope. Jessica and I looked at each other, nodding. We knew this wasn't just a simple divorce anymore. This was a battle.
And just as I thought, Elena was a genius. She wasn't just skilled, she had a sharp eye. She started digging into everything, from my dad's company papers to the anonymous bank accounts he thought he had cleverly hidden. And, as I had suspected, my dad was incredibly cunning. Elena uncovered dozens of hidden assets and untransparent overseas investments. There were even transactions she suspected were money gained from swindling other women. Clearly, that diary file wasn't just the ramblings of a psychopath, it was also a treasure map of a financial criminal. But that wasn't all. One day, Elena asked my mom, her voice gentle but full of hidden meaning, "Miss Sarah, have you ever sold any personal assets to help Mr. David? For example, land or valuable jewelry?" My mom was silent for a moment. Her face showed a fleeting look of surprise, then she slowly nodded. My heart suddenly pounded. What was this about? It turned out, more than 20 years ago, when my dad was just starting his business, he faced countless difficulties. My mom, Sarah, did something none of us knew about. She sold her grandmother's inherited land, an asset that not only had immense material value, but also priceless sentimental meaning to our family. She used all that money to help my dad revive his company. That money, according to Mom, was enough for my dad to get a solid, new beginning, to build what he called his empire. Even I didn't know this. My mother had never mentioned it. She simply saw it as what a wife should do, a silent sacrifice to help her husband,
She never demanded any recognition. I looked at my mom, feeling both pity and immense pride. My mother had sacrificed far more than I ever realized. When Elena heard this, her eyes lit up. She said, her voice filled with excitement, "Then this isn't just marital property anymore. This is Miss Sarah's initial capital investment in Mr. David's business. This changes everything." With that invaluable information, Elena had enough grounds to demand 50% of the company or an equivalent amount from my father's enormous assets. David had thought he'd only have to share a small portion of their joint marital assets after the divorce. But no, now my mother wasn't just a betrayed wife. She was also an initial investor who had been blatantly defrauded. When my father received the notice about the demand from Elena's lawyer, he truly lost his temper. He started growling, cursing, and making all sorts of threats. I knew he never expected things to escalate like this. He thought he held all the cards, that he would easily get away with it. But no, control had now slipped from his grasp.
I knew my father, David, wasn't the kind of person to accept defeat easily. You know, a psychopath doesn't really grasp the concept of losing. He would fight to the very end, regardless of dignity or morality. Just as I predicted, my dad truly went insane. He called and threatened my mom and me non-stop. He'd ruin Mom's reputation and make sure I could never hold my head up again. He even tried to slander Jessica, accusing her of being a swindler and my accomplice in extorting him. In short, he pulled out every dirty trick a scoundrel could conceive of. He grew even bolder in his public manipulation of Olivia. He relentlessly sent texts and called her bad-mouthing Mom and me. "Your brother and your mom are trying to destroy my life. You have to help me." He even tried to bribe Olivia further, all just to get her on his side. It was disgusting. But my dad made one colossal miscalculation. He underestimated my mother. My mom, the woman he thought was weak and easily manipulated, was now the most resilient. In court, when my dad tried to twist the truth, tried to portray Mom as greedy, she held her head high. She showed no fear. Every word she spoke was the truth. Every word was the pain she had endured. She refused even the smallest compromises my dad offered. My mom was adamant about not taking a single penny of his ill-gotten gains, and he had to pay for everything he had done. I had never seen my mother so strong. She stood up for herself, not just for herself, but for all the women David had hurt. My mom transformed her pain into strength. And that's when I knew David was at the end of his rope. From being a successful businessman, my father suddenly lost half of his empire. I looked at the panic on his face in court, and my heart truly swelled with satisfaction. He deserved it. But you know, my dad was still so stubborn. He wouldn't easily accept defeat. He thought he could still salvage some remnants of his reputation. He decided to throw a grand party, a magnificent company event, as if to prove to the whole world, "I'm still fine, I'm still the great David." But that also became our opportunity to expose his true colors to his entire world. We walked into the banquet hall. My dad was standing amidst the crowd, acting as if he owned the place. When he saw us, me, Mom, and even Jessica, his face instantly changed. From self-importance, it morphed into fear, then absolute rage. He wanted to rush over and stop us, but it was already too late. My mom walked straight to the center of the hall where my dad stood. She didn't scream, she didn't make a scene. Mom just took the microphone, her voice very calm, but every word was like a knife. "Hello, everyone," my mom said. "I'm Sarah, David's ex-wife. I'm not here today to celebrate, but to tell the truth about this man, a truth he has buried for decades." She didn't just talk about the divorce, she talked about why. She spoke of David's business trips, his private notes, and how he reveled in hurting women. She delved into details about how David financially frauded Jessica and others. She even presented legal documents, court seals, proving David had lost half of his assets and the company because of his despicable actions. The entire hall fell silent, and only the sound of my mother's voice through the microphone echoed.
All eyes turned to my father. I could see him trembling. His mask of the perfect man had completely crumbled. That was a moment I'll never forget. The moment justice was finally served publicly and with immense satisfaction. My father, that psychopath, was facing his own karma. His face turned beet red, his eyes bulging as he stared at my mom, at Jessica, then at me. I swear that look was filled with pure hatred, but he was powerless.
The hall began to buzz. Everyone looked at David as if he were a monster in human form. Whispers, disgusted glances, hurried phone calls. My father's reputation, the image of the successful businessman, exemplary man he had painstakingly built, shattered into a million pieces right then and there. The months that followed still felt like a nightmare that had just ended, but at least now we were heading in the right direction. David had vanished from our lives, and that was a liberation. Though the emotional wounds wouldn't heal easily, at least now we could face them together. My mom was much stronger than I ever imagined. She no longer lived in an illusion, and I saw her as if a lifelong burden had been lifted. Mom started taking painting and gardening classes, things she never had time for before. I saw her smile more too. As for me, I'm still continuing on my path, but everything is different now. This experience taught me so much. I want to use it to help others, those who are also facing lies and manipulators out there. And then Olivia, after witnessing everything, she finally realized her mistake. She had been manipulated by Dad. I knew that. She cried a lot, apologizing to Mom and me. I wasn't angry with her. She was a victim too. Now the three of us, Mom, Olivia, and I, have mended our relationships, stronger than ever. My family is no longer perfect, like the facade David created, but now it's a real family. A family built on truth, on love, and on trust, not on lies. After everything that happened, David completely disappeared from our lives. But you know, karma didn't stop there. Sometimes I still get news about him through old friends. The David now, you wouldn't recognize him. The successful businessman facade, the perfection he once prided himself on, has now completely vanished. He lives a lonely life, ostracized by society. No money, no friends, no family, alone. Exactly what he deserved. Never, ever trust appearances. A person can seem perfect no matter how successful, but inside, they might be a devil. Always stay vigilant and always trust your instincts. If you feel something is off, investigate. Another crucial point. The truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a sweet lie. And protect the ones you love. Don't let them live in an illusion. Don't let them be exploited or hurt like my mother was. Don't stay silent when you see something wrong. Thank you for listening to today's story from the Guilty Notes channel. If this story resonated with you, please like, share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional real-life stories and valuable lessons. See you in the next video.